In a dramatic turn of events, the courtroom showdown between Blake Lively and the online creators she subpoenaed just took a shocking twist. The judge has officially denied both the sanctions Blake's team requested and their protective order, marking a major setback in her ongoing legal strategy. What was once seen as a powerful celebrity move to intimidate and silence critics is now unraveling under judicial scrutiny. This ruling doesn't just impact Blake Lively. It sends shockwaves through Hollywood, the influencer world, and anyone watching the fine line between fame, freedom of speech, and legal overreach. Blake Lively's legal team had argued that the subpoenaed creators were obstructing justice and should be punished with sanctions. At the same time, they requested a protective order to keep crucial elements of the case sealed and confidential, but the court was not convinced. Instead of backing Lively, the judge made it clear this case must be transparent, and the creators' responses deserve to be heard without being muzzled or penalized. This isn't just a legal loss, it's a public relations disaster. The narrative that Blake was wielding her influence to silence dissenters is gaining even more traction now that a judge has essentially refused to support her aggressive legal tactics. Online creators are speaking out, journalists are digging deeper, and fans are questioning everything, including who's really in the wrong. In this in-depth breakdown, we'll unpack the court's reasoning, examine the response from creators, analyze what this means for Blake's legal and public image, and discuss how this ruling may set the stage for even bigger revelations in court. Let's dive in, because the judge's ruling didn't just shake up this case. It might have changed the game entirely. The legal world and pop culture sphere were both taken aback this week, as a judge formally denied Blake Lively's request for sanctions and a protective order in her ongoing legal battle targeting content creators. The ruling comes at a critical time, just as Lively's legal team had been ramping up pressure on various YouTubers, bloggers, and social media personalities who had covered her feud with actor Justin Baldoni. According to newly unsealed documents, Lively's team had asked the court to impose monetary penalties and legal restrictions on the subpoenaed creators, accusing them of delaying compliance, acting in bad faith, and even attempting to evade accountability. The legal language was firm, portraying the creators as not only uncooperative, but actively obstructive, but the judge saw things very differently. In a detailed ruling issued this week, the court found that the creators in question had reasonably raised concerns about the scope and intent of the subpoenas. More importantly, the judge emphasized the importance of First Amendment protections and the need for transparency in a case that has already drawn significant public attention. In denying the sanctions, the judge noted that the creators had not acted in bad faith, but were instead exercising their right to question subpoenas that they viewed as overly broad or intimidating. And when it came to the protective order, the ruling was even clearer. The request for blanket secrecy lacked sufficient justification. This decision is especially important because it reinforces that celebrities cannot use the court system as a tool for controlling public narratives, especially not when they involve legal disputes with broader implications for speech and media. The ruling also raises questions about Blake Lively's legal strategy. Why seek sanctions and a gag order unless you're trying to prevent damaging information from coming out? The court's rejection of both measures suggests that the judiciary is wary of being used as a tool for PR image control, especially when the targets are individuals without institutional backing or deep legal resources. In the days following the ruling, legal analysts and First Amendment advocates weighed in. Many applauded the judge's decision as a win for speech fairness and accountability. Others noted the potential long-term implications if public figures continue to pursue legal action against independent media or commentary channels. This case may serve as a landmark precedent for how far they can actually go. The creators who were subpoenaed, meanwhile, are celebrating, though they still face the burden of discovery requests and court dates. This ruling gives them a powerful new tool, a public record showing that the court did not view them as obstructive or dishonest. Instead, the burden now shifts back onto Blake Lively's team to explain why they pursued these aggressive measures in the first place. Coming up, we'll explore how the creators have responded publicly, how this ruling has changed their position in the case, and what this all might mean for Blake's legal reputation moving forward. Following the judge's denial of Blake Lively's sanctions and protective order, the individuals who were subpoenaed, a mix of online creators, legal analysts, and commentary YouTubers, finally felt they had the space to speak their truth. For months, they'd been walking a tightrope, balancing their right to discuss a high-profile case against the looming threat of legal consequences. But this ruling changed everything. One creator who had previously kept their identity confidential posted a video titled "We Were Right About Blake Lively, Here's the Truth." In it, they describe how the subpoena disrupted their personal and professional life. When that legal letter showed up at my door, the creator explained, I felt like I was being hunted for having an opinion. Others joined in, some through lengthy threads on social media, others via legal commentary videos. A recurring theme emerged: a collective sense of relief, but also a warning about how close things came to silencing independent voices. The fact that this even made it to court, said another creator, tells you how dangerous things are getting when it comes to celebrity power and media control. Several of the creators had hired legal representation of their own despite being independent and without major backing. We were prepared to fight this, one legal advisor noted. But the court's ruling affirms what we argued all along. These subpoenas were overreaching and the demand for secrecy was unjustified. The real concern, many pointed out, wasn't just the legal documents, it was the chilling effect. The moment a content creator hears they're being subpoenaed by one of the most powerful celebrity couples in Hollywood, it sends a message. One that says, if you talk about us, we'll take legal action. But now that message is being reversed. The creators, once silent and cautious, are now empowered and vocal, and the tone is shifting fast. Some have even hinted at preparing counterclaims or filing anti-slap motions to push back against what they view as retaliatory legal behavior. Importantly, this all comes amid heightened attention to the larger Blake Lively vs. Justin Baldoni dispute. What started as a feud involving private disputes, movie production drama, and PR maneuvering has now become a landmark free speech issue. These creators were not involved in the original conflict, yet were pulled in simply for talking about it. Experts are beginning to connect the dots. The subpoenas seemed targeted, precise, and focused on creators who had taken a more critical or inquisitive tone about Blake Lively's actions. While Lively's team insists it was about fact-finding, the optics are clear. Too many. This looked like an attempt to intimidate. Media watchdogs are now watching closely. Some legal journalists have labeled this moment a watershed event for creator rights. This ruling affirms that public figures can't bulldoze their way through uncomfortable coverage, wrote one op-ed in a leading legal publication. It sets a precedent that judges will weigh free speech even when celebrities are the plaintiffs. Meanwhile, social media is ablaze. Hashtags like hashtag free to speak, hashtag creators v celebs, and hashtag Blake Lively backlash are trending, while clips from the courtroom are circulating rapidly. Many fans who once supported Lively are now reconsidering her role in this entire ordeal, especially after this loss. In the next segment, we'll break down how legal analysts view this ruling from a procedural standpoint and what Blake Lively's legal team is expected to do next. Will they appeal? Will they refocus on the original case against Baldoni? Or will they escalate the fight against the creators? We'll also explore how this shift has affected Blake and Ryan Reynolds' public image, because the consequences aren't just legal anymore, they're cultural. As the dust settles around the denied sanctions and protective order, legal experts from across the country are weighing in, and many of them are not surprised by the judge's decision. In fact, several constitutional scholars, media law attorneys, and courtroom analysts are calling the ruling not only correct but necessary. Let's start with the legal core of the ruling. Blake Lively's team had filed two major requests. 1. Sanctions against the content creators for what they called deliberate non-compliance and delay. 2. A protective order which would have shielded certain subpoenaed materials from becoming public, citing reputational harm and privacy interests. But the judge rejected both motions. The reasoning, as one legal analyst explained, you can't weaponize the legal system to chill speech, especially not against non-party individuals. The creators who were subpoenaed weren't defendants. They weren't even involved in the original dispute between Lively and Baldoni. Their only offense was that they'd made commentary videos or social media posts analyzing the situation, often citing publicly available court documents. According to the court, that's not misconduct, that's participation in a public discussion. The judge reportedly noted that the subpoenas were unusually broad and that the creators had made reasonable attempts to comply or negotiate scope rather than flatly refusing. In denying the sanctions, the court essentially said these people are not obstructing justice, they're protecting their rights. On the protective order request, legal professionals noted something even more striking. There was no compelling justification, said one former federal magistrate. Blake Lively's team wanted the court to shield sensitive or potentially embarrassing information. But that's not how protective orders work. You don't get one just because you're famous. Transparency, the judge emphasized, is critical in cases with public interest. And since the Lively-Baldoni dispute had already spilled into the press, the argument for secrecy rang hollow. This sets an important legal precedent, especially in the era of influencer commentary and public litigation. If creators can be subpoenaed, Every time they comment on a celebrity legal issue, the entire world of independent journalism and digital discourse would be at risk. Civil rights groups, including First Amendment coalitions, praised the decision. Some had already been preparing amicus briefs in case the judge had ruled the other way, anticipating a dangerous precedent that could be used against journalists, podcasters, and even everyday users posting about high-profile cases. Interestingly, this ruling may also limit future attempts by celebrities to use subpoenas as a PR weapon. The court sent a message: you can't use legal documents to scare people into silence. If there's no clear, narrow, and legitimate legal need, subpoenas will be challenged and possibly overturned. Some even believe this decision could be cited in future free speech cases, especially those involving digital content. This is about more than Blake Lively, said one constitutional law professor. It's about the evolving role of media and the line between public discourse and legal intimidation. So what happens now? Blake Lively's legal team faces a critical decision. Do they appeal the denial and escalate the legal fight, knowing it could draw even more attention? Or do they quietly move forward with the original claims against Justin Baldoni, hoping to shift the spotlight? Sources close to the case say her team is frustrated but focused. Some reports even suggest internal disagreement within her legal and PR advisors, with some pushing for a more aggressive strategy and others urging a full media reset. Meanwhile, Baldoni's side is watching closely. While this ruling wasn't directly connected to his case, it undoubtedly affects the overall atmosphere. The court's unwillingness to grant secrecy or punish speech may embolden his legal team to request more disclosures, more testimony, and more accountability, not less. Publicly, Baldoni has remained quiet, but some of his past court filings warned against media manipulation and procedural bullying. With this ruling, his concerns seem to have been validated. While the court's ruling against Blake Lively's sanctions and protective order is a definitive legal moment, the public response may be even more impactful. Within hours of the judge's decision becoming public, social media erupted. Fans, creators, and media professionals flooded timelines with reactions. And they weren't pulling punches. At the heart of the backlash is one central question: why was Blake Lively trying to silence independent voices in the first place? This question gained momentum fast as fans who once praised Lively for her grace and charm are now scrutinizing her behavior with new eyes. Suddenly, the woman who once seemed untouchable, admired for her red carpet poise and Hollywood elegance, is facing accusations of being controlling, retaliatory, and out of touch with digital culture. Twitter threads exploded with users pointing out how the subpoena recipients were primarily independent creators, not tabloid media giants or investigative outlets. She went after the little guys, one viral post read. And now the court said nope. On TikTok, creators stitched together clips from court documents, press coverage, and past videos to tell a new narrative that Blake Lively's attempt to use legal force backfired dramatically. Many used phrases like overreach, celebrity censorship, and digital bullying. And the response wasn't limited to Lively alone. Ryan Reynolds found himself pulled into the controversy, with fans questioning whether he supported the move or tried to stop it. Some even suggested that the couple's usually well-managed public image may not survive this intact. This is their first real scandal, one entertainment writer tweeted, and they're failing the test. The creators who were subpoenaed, now somewhat vindicated by the court, have become folk heroes of the moment. Not because they're perfect, but because they stood their ground. And because the legal system backed them up. They're being celebrated for refusing to delete videos, for lawyering up, and for publicly documenting their experience. A few prominent YouTubers released follow-up content breaking down the judge's ruling. Their videos have drawn massive attention with titles like, "Blake Lively tried to shut me up, but the judge said nitrogen monoxide. We stood up to celebrity power and won. This changes everything." Content creators versus celebs. Meanwhile, mainstream media outlets have begun covering this story from a free speech angle, rather than a Hollywood gossip lens. The New York Times, The Guardian, and Vanity Fair each ran pieces examining what this legal development says about the role of power in the influencer era. Even celebrities have started to weigh in, though mostly through indirect support. Actress and activist Anna Kendrick, long associated with Justin Baldoni and his production ethos, liked several tweets defending the creators. Others stayed silent, perhaps watching to see where this all leads before taking a side. The real takeaway from this moment: there's a shift happening. For years, celebrities have relied on a mix of PR management and legal discretion to navigate controversy, but in 2025, those tools no longer guarantee silence. In fact, they can backfire and blow up a reputation overnight. The ruling in court didn't just deny Blake Lively's legal requests, it triggered a cultural reckoning. It asked whether public figures have the right to weaponize lawsuits in an age where content creators with audiences in the millions play an essential role in how narratives unfold. Blake's legal team may regroup, her PR advisors may recalibrate. But this isn't just about what she does next. It's about how the public sees her now as someone who tried to use the law to stifle uncomfortable conversations and got called out for it. With the dust beginning to settle, many are realizing that the judge's ruling against Blake Lively's sanctions and protective order may go beyond just one court case. This moment could signal a seismic shift in how celebrities, content creators, and the public interact in a media landscape that's becoming harder and harder to control. Let's start with Hollywood. For decades, celebrities had the advantage of carefully curated media appearances, exclusive interviews, and strategic PR to manage their public image. And when things went off course, powerful legal teams were often used to suppress stories or shift narratives. But now, in the age of digital commentary and real-time public opinion, that entire playbook is being challenged. This ruling didn't just push back on Blake Lively's requests. It exposed a fundamental limitation: legal power can't override the court of public opinion. And certainly not when it's pitted against the First Amendment. Hollywood insiders are reportedly nervous. If Blake Lively, one of the most media-savvy stars, couldn't suppress uncomfortable scrutiny with subpoenas and protective orders, then who can? Industry analysts say this moment might be a wake-up call. Public figures may start thinking twice before using legal measures against YouTubers, streamers, or podcasters. Not because they can't, but because doing so could ignite even greater backlash, and because courts are now signaling they're willing to stand between creators and celebrity overreach. On the influencer side, things are changing fast. The creators who stood their ground have become symbols of resistance, not only legally, but culturally. Their victory wasn't just about avoiding sanctions, it was about being recognized as legitimate participants in public dialogue. Many up-and-coming commentators are now less afraid of covering controversial celebrity topics. Some are even forming networks to support one another legally and financially, realizing that the balance of power is starting to even out. In short, Blake Lively may have tried to chill speech, but she may have unintentionally empowered a new generation of digital watchdogs. And what about the law? Experts say we're entering an era where creator rights and celebrity privilege are on a collision course. The internet has democratized media, but the legal system is only now starting to catch up. This case is already being discussed in legal circles as a potential precedent for how subpoenas, speech protections, and digital privacy are handled. One major takeaway from the judge's ruling was the emphasis on proportionality. Just because someone is famous, the court emphasized, doesn't mean they can invoke secrecy or punish dissent without clear, narrow reasoning. That statement alone is powerful. It signals a shift toward transparency and public access, even when high-profile names are involved. Now imagine if the judge had ruled differently. If the sanctions had been granted or the protective order approved, this could have set a dangerous precedent. It could have opened the door to more lawsuits, more subpoenas, and more creators deleting content out of fear. Instead, we now have a court record saying the exact opposite, talking about a public dispute, analyzing documents, and forming opinions. That's not misconduct, that's participation in democracy. There's also a moral dimension to this fallout. Fans are now re-examining how they view celebrity authority. For many, this wasn't just a legal loss. For Blake Lively, it was a betrayal of trust. The idea that a beloved public figure would pursue legal actions against smaller voices without clear justification has changed the way people perceive her. The damage may not be irreversible, but it's profound, and unless Lively's team publicly addresses the issue, the silence may only amplify the damage. We're also seeing ripple effects across the media landscape. Journalists are more cautious about how they frame stories involving high-profile figures, ensuring they don't become targets themselves. Meanwhile, legal commentators are beginning to publish op-eds warning celebrities that attempts to silence criticism may now be viewed with heightened judicial skepticism. Finally, there's the political and philosophical layer. At a time when free expression is a major topic globally, this case adds fuel to the conversation. It forces everyone from lawyers to influencers to fans to ask who controls the story. And when that control is challenged, who gets to push back? When the judge ruled against Blake Lively's sanctions and protective order, it wasn't just a procedural moment. In a legal filing, it was the symbolic cracking of a Feud, a reminder that no matter how powerful, wealthy, or admired a celebrity may be, the legal system still values transparency, fairness, and freedom of expression over status. In many ways, this decision marked a defining moment in the digital age. Not just for Blake Lively, not just for Justin Baldoni, and not even solely for the creators, who were dragged into the courtroom arena. It was a reminder of what's at stake when people with platforms large or small choose to speak out. For months, Blake Lively's legal strategy appeared meticulously coordinated. Her team attempted to cast a wide net subpoenaing commentary, creators, YouTubers, and legal analysts who had discussed the Baldoni dispute. These weren't casual trolls or misinformation spreaders. Many of them had relied on court documents, factual timelines, and public records. Their real offense, they weren't sympathetic to Blake's narrative. And so one by one they were subpoenaed, legal threats loomed. Some creators considered deleting their content. Others stopped covering the case altogether out of fear. The message was clear: don't cross the line or we'll come for you. But what this ruling proves is that the line Blake's team tried to draw wasn't one defined by the law, it was a line of control, and the judge refused to validate it. This moment wasn't just a rejection of bad legal arguments. It was a defense of creator autonomy, public discourse, and the role that independent voices play in our culture. The creators who fought back, many with limited legal resources, stood up not just for themselves, but for every journalist, analyst, and commentator who's ever wondered, am I next? The judge's words were restrained, measured, and formal, but their meaning was bold and unmistakable. This court would not allow subpoenas to be used as punishment. It would not grant secrecy without justification, and it would not endorse sanctions against people who did nothing more than challenge powerful narratives. That ruling, dry on the page, explosive in consequence, is already being studied in legal circles as a possible landmark for free speech in the influencer era. And for Blake Lively, the consequences stretch far beyond the courtroom. There's no denying her talent, her success, her place in the Hollywood elite. But this legal loss and the perception that she tried to legally intimidate her critics has added a heavy crack to the polished image. The woman who once seemed untouchable now appears defensive, reactive, and possibly disconnected from the evolving norms of media transparency. Her supporters say this was about protecting her reputation, her privacy, her truth. But the public sees something different now: a celebrity who tried to silence others and a legal system that wouldn't let her. What happens next is anyone's guess. Will Blake Lively's team double down and appeal the ruling? Will they quietly back away from the subpoenas and shift focus to the main case against Baldoni? Or will they change tactics entirely, choosing to confront the public narrative instead of trying to control it? And for the creators involved, what's next for them? Some are pursuing legal remedies of their own. Others are using their platforms to tell the story of what happened behind the scenes. But one thing is clear: they are no longer afraid. Their confidence isn't just a product of the ruling. It's rooted in the outpouring of support they've received from fans, from legal experts, from fellow creators, and from institutions that recognize what this case could have meant if it had gone the other way. This is more than a celebrity headline. It's a wake-up call, a reflection of the clash between old Hollywood power and new media independence. For years, celebrity culture was curated by stylists, handlers, and PR firms. Now it's challenged by YouTubers, streamers, TikTokers, and commentators who refuse to be silent and refuse to be small. This case shows just how far some public figures will go to protect their narrative, and how the courts are still willing to say that's not how justice works. In the end, Blake Lively didn't just lose a legal motion. She lost a chance to redefine her public legacy. And instead of appearing strong, she now risks being remembered for the opposite, for trying to suppress voices and failing. For the wider world watching, this isn't just about gossip or celebrity drama, it's about accountability, about rights, about how truth is shaped and who gets to speak it. As this story continues to unfold, one thing is clear: the people on the receiving end of those subpoenas aren't just targets anymore. They're a symbol of resistance, a sign that even in the face of overwhelming power, the law still knows how to stand for something bigger. Justice in this case wasn't about who had the better PR team or the bigger name. It was about what's fair, what's right, and what's free. And in a world where influence can mean everything, that kind of justice that's priceless.